Hello, I'm Batman, and this is my game. Alright, I'm not going to do that impression for the entire review, because frankly, I don't think I'm that good at it. So this is a 2011 release, released to PS3, 360, and for Windows. Super hyped up game. Going into this, after Arkham Asylum, which got very good review scores, this is a sequel to Arkham Asylum. It's built up a whole lot, even though it's from a pretty small UK studio called Rocksteady. They got massive support after the first game, because although they were a small studio, they really pulled off a great game, which I'm probably going to go back and review that one. But because this is the more recent game, I want to start with this because there's more demand for a review for this. So a few interesting facts. This game got the highest review scores on the PS3, which is the version I'm playing. Its sales worldwide were a little over 6 million, which is very high. It's not like record-breaking high, but it did break a few records for being one of the fastest selling games in its first week, particularly in the UK and Europe. Now, I must be up front. I do have a bias reviewing this game. I think Batman is the best superhero out there. Don't even talk to me about Superman. Spider-Man's alright, but I gotta prefer Batman. And if you want to debate me in the comments, well, this might not be the best place for it, but I'll probably take you on for a few comments. I'm not gonna have an extended discussion, though. So, without any further ado, let's find out if this game deserved to sell 6 million copies, or if it deserves something more or something less. We'll jump right into the aesthetic elements of the game, starting with the sound, music, and then getting into the graphics. Arguably, these are the least important aspects of the game, but if this game is really as good as people say, these aspects become very important because they can make a difference between a good game and a great game. As a musician, I was very disappointed, actually. And I hate starting this review on a negative note, because I feel like this game is good. But I was very disappointed in the sort of background role I felt the music played for most of the time you were playing the game. Now, don't get me wrong. The intro has great music. The menu when you start up the game has great music. The theme is very good. Some of the cutscenes have good music. And some dramatic sections of the game also have good music. So I'm not saying the music is bad. It's just that it suffers from what I call Assassin's Creed syndrome. You're running across rooftops, you're jumping around, and what do you hear? Not much. Oh, there's music there, and they have okay background music, but most of the game you spend running around over rooftops and swinging around. And there's not that much to hear when you're doing that. Some epic music when you're jumping across rooftops would make it a lot more interesting. And why not have epic music? I mean, it's a pretty epic moment when you jump from one roof to another, or fly from a gargoyle to a rooftop halfway across the city, or use your batline and other gadgets to cross the city quickly. It's pretty cool. So why not have epic music when you're crossing the rooftops? I find that, you know, aside from some of the standard Batman music, like from the movies, basically, there's a lack of memorable songs in this game. Like I said before, it's fine for background music, but when you're just running around, which is most of the game, there's not a lot of epic music. When you're fighting, I don't feel like there's enough epic music, except for certain prearranged points in the plot. Which is not bad, it's just not great. So this is a game aspiring to greatness. The music needs to play a more prominent role. The guns, I can't quite explain it, but there's something about the gun sound effects that puts me off. They sound kind of fake. They sound a little too distant. It's a vague thing, it's very opinionative, but you know, it's very subjective, but I don't like the sounds of the guns. However, the conversations of the prisoners in Arkham City are fascinating. They're really fun to listen to. Some of them are funny, some of them are interesting, some give information that's very important. And finally, the ambient noise when you swing around the city, it's okay. Again, it's background sound. So overall, I give the sound effects and the music an 8 out of 10. Overall, my gripes with the sound come back to one thing. It doesn't really add enough to the atmosphere during most of the gameplay to be great. It's still good, don't get me wrong. However, this is largely made up for, in terms of creating an atmosphere, by the graphics. The graphics in this game are stunning. They really set the tone. They're dark and stylish, but they manage to be dark without being depressing. There's a great amount of detail, there are complex graphics. Even the trash in the street is a good effect. It looks like trash in the street. It's a nice detail to have. Because it's a slum. It's what you would expect to find, and it's a good detail. The atmosphere for the game, because of this detail, because of how it sets the tone, because of how it's dark and edgy, the atmosphere is just helped immensely by the graphics. It is an awe-inspiring feeling to be sitting on top of a building and then see Batman silhouetted against the moon over this gigantic sprawling city, and just knowing that you can go to anything you see and it all looks interesting. The insides of buildings look interesting, the different environments, different battles take place in interesting settings. They're varied settings. The only problem I have is that some of the textures get repeated a little too much. The trash in the street is to be expected, I'm not going to dock them for that. But the one case where it really stood out to me was when you see these little shanty towns built up around the city. Basically political prisoner camps. All the little shacks pretty much look the same. It seems like they got a little bit lazy. Just a tiny bit. Which I don't blame them. I mean, they were clearly doing a ton of work on the other stuff. But it's like, come on guys, you got everything right, but you left out this. It's like, come on. But overall, the graphics are great. They add a ton to the atmosphere. There's hardly anything to do to improve them realistically. You know, if possible, Rocksteady, as if they're watching this, try to repeat textures a tiny bit less. Overall, I have to be very stingy about giving it a 10 out of 10, so I'll give this a 9.5 out of 10. In my opinion, one of the most important elements of any game is the plot. Gameplay is most important, of course, it's a game. But even if everything else is kinda iffy, I can push through a game for the plot to see how it resolves itself. In this game, well, let's address the bad first. There are too many villains. This is the most common criticism of the game. And it does hold true. I'm not going to go a ton into it. If you've played the game, you know what I mean. If you've read other reviews, they've explained it. Moving on. One thing I want to bring up is that this plot is very good. But what would make it amazing, what would make it like a 10 out of 10, would be if it made you question something. It doesn't really make you question much. Like, one reoccurring theme in, like the Batman movies and the Batman TV shows. Like, for example, the Nostalgia Critic did a great segment on this when he reviewed the Batman animated show. At one point in the Batman animated show, they put Batman on trial, and they say, and this is an example of how to do it right, so I am going to get back to the review, but they put him on trial, and they say, like, all these villains are villains because of you, Batman. They're all because of your actions. If it weren't for you, Batman, the Joker would not exist. A lot of these villains would not exist. And it's a pretty heavy criticism of Batman, and most superheroes. Now, you can shoot that down, but it's an interesting debate to have, and it makes you question Batman. It doesn't even do like the Dark Knight does, where it has a political undertone. It's not philosophical, really. It's not going to pull a Metal Gear Solid and make you question the morality of cloning. Now, I can hear a lot of you screaming already, well, not every game has to do that. And you're absolutely right. Uncharted does not do that. But in my opinion, Uncharted has a better plot because it's a little bit more summer action film fun. This doesn't quite get dark enough, I don't think. Oh, it's dark. Don't get me wrong. But it's not quite dark enough for Batman. It's not quite fun enough to be like a summer movie or Uncharted. It's not quite philosophical to be Metal Gear Solid. It doesn't quite go in any of these directions enough. It tries to do them all, just like it tries to do all the villains. But on the other hand, on the good side, it is cool to meet so many characters. It's undeniable that there's an appeal to that, good and bad characters. And most of them are developed well. There are a few like Mr. Freeze who I feel like didn't need to be in the game, but most of them are developed pretty well. And even the ones that aren't developed well enough are still developed fine. They're not like horribly underdeveloped or anything. It does what it needs to. The plot is interesting enough to make you want to move forward, and more than that, you have fun with the plot. And the setting, finally, is awesome. The ending, I will say, a little bit of a letdown. I mean, it's a cool ending, but you know, because it's a comic book universe, that what happens in the ending, without any spoilers, what happens in the ending is not going to stay that way. Like, if you've played the game, you know what I mean. But the ending is not really a final resolution, because you know what happens in the ending is not going to stay that way. Overall, the plot does everything it needs to. It's just, I wish it would get a little bit more political or philosophical. You know, throw a little Metal Gear Solid in there. Do something like that. Make a point about the real world. I feel like it doesn't do that. At least not enough. It makes a little bit of a point about, like, imprisoning people in a city, but everyone's going to agree with that. So, what's the point, really? So, overall, 8.5 for the story. Okay, it's time for the big one. The gameplay. My God, the gameplay. I can't even explain it, just watch. This game, as you can see, blends so much together into just the most awesome combination imaginable. The stealth works beautifully. It is brilliant. It is hilarious to see the enemies begin to freak out once you start to dominate them in the battle. The hand-to-hand combat is brilliant, largely due to the countering system. But even without the countering system, it would still be really good. The combos are great. You can now counter multiple people, which you could not do in Arkham Asylum. You can counter up to like 3 people attacking you at once, which is the most you'll realistically have to deal with. And the counters look realistic. You know, you see people coming at Batman, you're like, oh my god, how's Batman going to get out of this? Push the triangle button, and he comes up with some brilliant way to get out of it. Now, there is a complaint that you could basically win any battle by just hitting the triangle button when the prompt appears. But I tried that, and it takes so remarkably long that it's unrealistic. Especially when enemies start to get guns and weapons. Like, countering with knives is something I could never get down. But some people can. That's just a fault on me, not on the game. This is some of the most satisfying gameplay I have ever experienced. The movement is so fluid, it's so fast-paced, and yet just slow enough so that you can think. It is overall completely brilliant, arguably some of the best gameplay in a game ever, I think. Certainly for a beat-em-up type of game. And yet it's not a beat-em-up. It's not a button masher. It manages to be a beat-em-up without being a button masher, which is rare and is a laudable achievement. The free running on the rooftops. That's another element of the game. and the reason it's not just a beat 'em up. Not only is there stealth, there's all the free running on the rooftops. It works beautifully, probably better than Assassin's Creed. There are all the gadgets, for crying out loud, all the gadgets you can use. It's just brilliant. I can go on and on. The only minor complaint I have is that using gadgets in combat is a little bit awkward. But that's it. I'm throwing up my hands in the air. 10 out of 10. No debating it. I saw IGN gave him a 9.5 for gameplay. I don't know what the hell's wrong with IGN. This is 10 out of 10 gameplay. I don't see any debating it. It is pure fun, but it is deep. You know, when you do the challenge rooms, and oh my god, I'm going to have to go on this whole separate rant about the challenge rooms. But when you play the challenge rooms, you find out that there's a lot of depth to the hand-to-hand combat. So 10 out of 10 for this. So here we are, coming up on the end of this review. And overall, I've said a lot of negative things about this game. It actually surprises me. But the reason for that is because to come up with problems for this game, I literally had to sit for like an hour and a half planning this video thinking, God, I know this game isn't perfect. Then when you think about it, you realize, yeah, the game would have been better if they'd done a few things differently. But my God, did they do a lot of things right. For a small studio, that's just, I think this is their second game. I mean, dang. They did a heck of a lot right. I just want to go on a quick rant about the challenge rooms. The challenge rooms are incredible. 3 levels of difficulty, normal, expert, master. I've done some challenge rooms on every difficulty. They really hone your skills, and they show just the great variety of power that the enemy can have. They ramp up the difficulty through actually making the enemies smarter. What a crazy idea. And they have a true increase in difficulty. I've not yet tried New Game Plus, but I cannot wait to. Have not tried Catwoman yet either. Again, I cannot wait to. This is strictly a review of the Batman portion on PS3, which got the highest review scores out of any console, so that might be, my review might be a little higher than it would be on other consoles. But the point is, getting back to these challenge rooms and some of the extra things that come on the PS3, although challenge rooms are universal to all the consoles, you know, these extra features are great. It's like with the challenge rooms, what more could you ask for? You get to beat up tons of people and hone your skills in hand-to-hand, while also having great predator maps, where you sneak up on your enemies. You have certain advantages or disadvantages that you can choose for each battle. It's brilliant, adds a ton of replayability. This game is remarkably replayable. You almost have to play it twice. And certainly you could play it more. It's a great open world game. You could easily just keep running around, doing your thing. Some things don't work, like the Riddler trophies. Those are just a pain. It's like Nerdcubed said. Nerdcubed said it right. This is paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, well, I figured out how to beat the Riddler. You don't play his stupid challenges. That's how you outsmart the Riddler, because they're not worth playing. But those are optional. And even them, they're kind of fun. I'll admit it. They're not horrible. They didn't screw up by putting those in there. So overall, this is not an average of scores, but because I love the optional rooms, I love the challenge rooms, I love the gameplay, that's the most important aspect. The plot does what it needs to, pretty well. The graphics add a ton to the atmosphere. I wish the music was a little bit more prominent, but it does its job, and it does it pretty well. Overall, this game gets a 9.5 out of 10. Again, not an average of my scores, because gameplay is weighted a little heavier, and I love the challenge rooms. They're freaking awesome. So yeah, even if it were only for the gameplay, this is a game that you should go out and buy right now. Okay, the price I'm sure has dropped to like $40 or $50 or $30. Probably less than that even used. Go do yourself a favor and get this game. It is awesome. The only reason I made criticisms of this game at all is because on the slim chance that someone from Rocksteady sees this video, I want them to know the little things they could fix. But at this point, it's about fixing the little things. That's what would make this game legendary, rather than just a great game. That's all I've got. PirateoftheTouYube out. One last thing, please rate this video, as in give it thumbs up, thumbs down. Comment on this video, and please consider subscribing to my channel. After all, it is free.